Welcome. Once again, it is my privilege and pleasure to come and spend these few moments of your time. In the end, all things belong as one. All things are a unity that, shall we say, divides itself and yet remains unified. So that means that every possible way of looking at something offers something in alignment with such a thing. There is a lot of thoughts, shall we say, around the nature of the numbers. As I have pointed out in the past, there are two universal languages. The language of mathematics, the language of music. So, and both then speak in the same way, shall we say. So we are talking then about your year, as you call it, the year of the 2023. Numbers then that add up to 7. 7 is, shall we say, just before one meets the octave. So then, shall we say, the law of octaves implies that is the final completion of a cycle. And in musical terms, then, the seventh note stands waiting for its completion. So then we say the final is the repetition of its beginning. Do you follow what I mean? So in this particular year, everything is, shall we say, on edge. The edge that it is waiting for resolution. What is to finally come into its completed function. So we stand then on the edge of the shift in consciousness. The shift then is somewhat disorganized. Shall we say it is disorganizing because the old then is become unstabilized. All across your planet, everything is not reliable, shall we say. The sea is not reliable. It is not, shall we say, placid any longer. The land is not placid any longer. It is, shall we say, shaking up the old structures. Everything is in such a way. The weather is not stabilized. Everything is on edge. The politics is not stabilized. Everything is on edge. Even the political infrastructure is not stabilized. Everything is on its edge. And everyone is waiting for something to happen. Do you understand? So there is also a lot of tiredness. When you come to the end of such a place, one is waiting for some change, something to occur, and everyone wants to know how to protect themselves from what is about to happen. Do you understand what I mean? As if that is a possibility. But the shift in consciousness is not a continuation of the old. There is, shall we call it, rather than the shift in consciousness, let us call it the radical shift in consciousness. It is a re-evolutionary shift in the way that humanity as individual units becomes unified in its progress. That is enough for us to begin our conversation.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mercredan, for being with us today. Our first question is that we've already seen a massive events happen across the planet. What else can be expected for 2023?
Shall we say more of the alarm? You understand, here is how it works. Most people set their alarm clock to wake up in the morning. The alarm clock goes off, and the first inclination is to shut it down, put it on snooze, as it were. Let us have a little bit more sleep before, and then it goes off again, and you are lying there trying to ignore it. And the more you ignore it, the louder it gets. So everyone begins to hear the alarm clock of the next door neighbor that does not want to hear anything, does not want to get up, does not want to change their position. Do you understand? So while many are recognizing something has to change, many are simply trying to continue the old way, constantly avoiding reality as it begins to change. If one changes with something, then it, shall we say, one is in the flow of it. If one tries to resist something, then the resistance, shall we say, makes the whole thing more powerful. So there is an idea that such changes can be reversed. All one has to do is rebuild in the old places. And yet you recognize those around are saying for the first time ever, let us not build what has shown to fail. Let us try to build something more in relation to what is happening. Do you follow what I mean? And it isn't just in the, shall we say, the locations and so forth, but it is in the systems of government. You have had governments over a long period of time. There are different versions. But in the end, there are versions where one side does one thing and the other side tries to force it to its other perspective. So then one creates competition, one creates disharmony, one creates laws and legal confrontations, and so on it goes. All of it, shall we say, eating up the capital. The capital is the resources that would be much better spent in the benefit for all. Does this shine some light into this area?
Yeah, it does. Thank you. So how can we best prepare ourselves for the future, and is it predetermined in some way?
It is always a difficult question because everyone, shall we say, is in their own world. Everyone is evolving from the, shall we say, the background of their own learning. So one is predetermining by one's attitudes, and such attitudes arise from one's understanding. To understand. So what that truly means is to prepare. One needs to remember you are not alone. Because when one feels alone, one tries to protect oneself against something that is, shall we call it, the enemy. So you see that these changes are happening and they are causing upset and destruction and disturbances and so forth. It is the enemy. But this is truly the divine bringing balance. And when you begin to align yourself with it, realizes these changes must occur. It is not that one can do anything about them individually, because it isn't designed to work that way. It is designed to bring everyone into harmony. Do you understand? So as one realizes this, one begins to recognize I have to transform myself to be in the flow with the divine as it brings back these into balance. And in doing so, shall we say, the divine provides a pathway for that to occur. Do you follow what I mean? There is nothing to fear if one is truly in alignment with the university. That is, that one is willing to offer, that everyone has to become stabilized, not this one over here that has more and that one that has nothing. While that continues on, if one believes even that that is true, then you will, of course, be brought into balance to find, shall we say, the karmic connection. The karma, as we have pointed out, is instantaneous at this point. So whatever you think, whatever your beliefs are, that what you deserve will, of course, manifest in alignment with the unified field. Does this make some sort of sense? So
Yeah.
preparation then is when one is settled and willing to release whatever should be taken from me. I allow willingly. Do you follow what I mean? And the willingness to allow is the greatest protection that you have. Because you are working with the divine, not against it. The divine will be, shall we say, it is said, the divine will be done. You understand, will be done in this world as in its own, as in the whole. Nothing can exist without the will of the divine. Maybe I should put that into context because there are so many religious texts in various forms, and all of them point to what happens when one is devoted, shall we say, to some idol, to something that is separate from the divine. When the cities or the nations are in conflict with the divine, then tragedy comes in whatever form in order to free the souls. Do you follow what I mean? Then freedom from one's attachments to things. When one is not attached, one is free. That does not mean to say that you must go without, but it means that it comes and it is released. One is not attached to it. Enough on that question. Another.
So, just to clarify, you've said nothing to fear. We have nothing to fear if we're aligned with the divine. Is getting aligned with the divine that when we are willing to let go of any attachment? Is that how you say?
Of course. Then you are aligned to the divine. Then you put yourself in the hands of the divine. You say, I am in your hands. I trust in the divine. I am not having to fear anything because I am trusting in the divine. And for some people, this at this point in time, because of the nature of the unfolding of humanity, sometimes that might mean that you have finished with the physical world. You are not fearful of letting it go. You are not any longer attached to physicality. Do you understand? It is not anything to fear because when you move through that transformation a new, shall we say, sequence of understanding comes into play. So there will be more, shall we say, that are transcending. Often there was a notion that one can ascend to a higher plane and still remain in the physical world. But one has to question that, doesn't one?
Thank you. So, do you have any practical guidance of how we can let go of our attachments to the point where we're no longer attached to the physicality?
One is asking the question as if there is a physical way to let go of the physical world. How is that possible? The physical world is the attachment. If one, however, recognizes, shall we say, that is purely attachment, purely the fear of unknown, the fear of letting go, then one is not looking for, shall we say, practical, but shall we say, inner shifts in consciousness. Then one begins to understand that in joy or enjoyment is a temporary thing. Shall we say, you are on the planet to enjoy it. And if you enjoy it without reserve, one is not truly committed to, shall we say, being on the planet as you are. So, shall we say, connected to the understandings and the lessons that it provides. Does this make some sort of sense?
Yeah. Thank you. So, how can we use our individual shift in consciousness to influence the collective?
The moment you begin to, shall we say, truly sense that you are in, as shall we say, as a representative for the divine, then one realizes that you are unique, you are important, but you are not any more unique than anyone else, nor more important than anyone else. So you meet someone in the street and you see them as in their uniqueness. You see them as, shall we say, so important because each one that, shall we say, transforms, each one that becomes aware of the shift in consciousness in themselves awakens the whole. So, shall we say, you are sharing your awakeness, not just, shall we say, verbally, not just in your thoughts, shall we say, but also in your being. You are, you become, shall we say, a light, a beacon of light. Because you see others as beautiful. Do you see what I mean? You have ascended beyond judgments of others. cease to project your own dissatisfactions out onto others. And they recognize that. Do you follow what I mean? And the recognition that they are acknowledged and accepted as they are, shall we say, that frees each one. Does this make some sort of sense? So the shifting consciousness is the joining of, shall we say, societies, communities. It is the joining up and the offering of one's self for such movement as given by the divine. In other words, quite often, as individuals, you are shown the way. Something inside of you awakens and you are given a task. The question then is only, will you follow your task? Will you do your task as best you might? Does this make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, it does. Thank you.
And it is common. That everyone is being offered that task, and it is becoming more common then for those around to, shall we say, rise to that occasion.
Lovely. Thank you. Now, I feel like the next question's already just been answered, but I'll ask it anyway. What can the spiritual community do to help make the way forward easier?
Again, so often the words so hide something as well. When one says the spiritual community, which one? Because everyone thinks they are in a spiritual community. Everyone thinks I have the way, and in doing so, separate out. The true nature of this is to put aside spiritual communities and see everyone belongs. Everyone is important, even those that seemingly have no spiritual belief at all. Everyone belongs to the divine. Everyone is playing their part in the overall transformation. And that is what is important. Even those that you thoroughly disagree with. Do you understand? They are bringing to the surface notions and ideas that, shall we say, often have gone unnoticed or have been fed in the past. So it is always true. One has been as such a person. One is as such a person, or one is yet to be that way. Do you understand? So when you recognize that, then your judgments on them fall away, and you realize compassion is what is needed. To see that if someone is going against, shall we say, the unity of all things, then the consequence of that is the fall. So it is said in the beginning that humanity fell into existence, fell, shall we say, by attachments, by thoughts of the physicality, of the benefits and so on, fell into competition, where one could take from the other. One could take something for personal benefit. And since that moment, humanity has become ever more ingrained in heavy mess. And now it is shattering. The old, as all things, is breaking apart. The old security is no longer. Embracing such a place, recognizing that nothing is destroyed, it is only transformed.
Thank you. Thank you. Can you tell us, are there extraterrestrial beings orchestrating all of these events, or are there other groups creating them?
Once the extraterrestrials who physicalize, to come into, shall we call it, hard focus. But on the edge, shall we say, such beings have learned how to materialize enough to be seen by some, and to lift themselves out of order. The nature then is to bring to awareness there is something beyond the physical world, as it were. The physicality that is created in solid matter. Do you understand? The universe then is, shall we say, not as solid as it appears. It is solid because you are viewing it through solid materials, through solid manifestation. So, shall we say, various instruments convert the, shall we say, the resonance frequencies into forms that can be recognized. And yet all of this is bringing up to awareness the fields of influence that make up, shall we say, consciousness out of the ultimate endlessness of divine. To understand the divine becomes limited in order to transform itself, in order for it to grow. So it is not as if there is a fixed anything. It is all things in potential. So whatever one begins to appreciate, I want to use that word, to appreciate, that is not necessarily to believe, but to appreciate the option will begin will begin its appearance in measurable forms. Does that, shall we say, leave some ideas in the imagination? Of course, one cannot perceive that in physical reality. So it is part of the imaginary field of influence. Do you understand? So science, as it explores the universe, explores it first by theory, that is, by imagination. There are problems and challenges and mathematics and so forth, and then there is an imagination that will bring all of that into a position that can be recognized. Do you follow what I mean? And from that, materialization begins to occur. Mostly, shall we say, the theory is not accurate, and so the materialization brings as many questions as answers. And that is the commonality of human thought. Every idea holds as many questions as there are answers. So when we answer the questions, you are left with a greater thread of questions. Does this make some sort of sense?
It does, thank you. So, next question is, if the banks and financial institutions are folding, is there anything else that can be invested in, like gold?
Always the solid mineral. Of course, there is lots of things that everybody wants to hold on to. And yet it is still more of the same. There is those that want more than others to have a greater security. What will you do? When your neighbor is starving, what will you do? Because holding on to all of this is more of the same suffering that has to come to an end. Do you understand? Of course, there are plenty of other minerals. The more the more unusual it is, the greater the perceived value. You can have all sorts of materials. If you had, shall we say, the ability, one could store, shall we say, the uranium. Uranium is very useful, but it has with it such danger. Do you understand? So there are plenty of options. Some things are smaller, some things are greater in value and in size. So the agreement, shall we say, in present terms, is that gold and silver are backings for currency that is for things you can trade for other things. But it, and shall we say, a small reserve is useful for all in the time of change. That is when currencies do not have the value that is printed on their surface. They are recognized for the materials they are made out of. But shall we say, one does not need a giant fortune. Does this make sense? So I am going to suggest everyone might like a little bit in reserve. Transitionary, shall we say.
Okay, thank you.
Shall we say this? Because if one were to invest, shall we say, in a drum of gasoline, and you were not going to use it yourself, the value will increase quite rapidly. The less there is, the more value it has. But who to sell it to? Do you understand? If you were to give it to the truck driver to bring the goods for everyone, would that be beneficial to the whole or beneficial to the self? Do you follow what I mean?
Yeah.
And this is where it comes to, because one automatically has an emotional response to such an idea. That is, shall we say, one of the measures of spirituality.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. So there are some teachers that are saying that this change that we're experiencing is the end of the patriarchy. What is your comments on this?
Of course, this is the end of hierarchy. And when one paints it in a certain way, as if it is just this side, but not those ones, one ceases to recognize it is not a gendered idea, it is a hierarchical one. Those with the most gain the most power. And there are plenty of very wealthy people. even wealthy children. And they have more power than any of the poor ones. Do you follow what I mean? So it is not the end of a patriarchy, it is the end of a hierarchy, all hierarchies. And so it is that a new order of thinking comes into being. Initially, of course, shall we say, it creates more disharmony as various groups fight for prominence, fight for control. But in the end, it is not in the order of, shall we say, weapons that will create a new framework of organization. I think that clearly answers the question.
Yes, thank you. So you've talked a lot about the first phase of the shift in consciousness being complete by the end of 2024. Will we see the end of the hierarchy, or at least a substantial amount of the end of the hierarchy by then?
It's like many things. As it is replaced, it will not seem so in the beginning, because human beings alive in the present framework look at everything in terms of hierarchy, so they will perceive and continue to perceive it in such a fashion, even as it dissolves. So I want to say, you will not see the end of the true end of such structures for, shall we say, for well over hundreds of years, maybe 200 or even 300 years, because it is restructuring within the shift in consciousness. Does this make some sort of does one get a perception of how that occurs?
Yeah, so the first phase of the shift in consciousness is just the wake-up phase then?
Of course, it is when one begins to recognize that, shall we say, a drought that is occurring, shall we say, in Africa and is causing all sorts of loss of life and livelihoods in that place, cannot be solved by putting a fence around it. It will become solved when the rest of the planet begins to shift its worldview. And that is the shift in consciousness, a shift in worldview, a beginning to take actions that have been known about, but have been unable to be achieved because of pure hierarchy, as it were, by pure ignorance and greed. But that is beginning to recognize that, shall we say, the storms that destroy your peace arrive because of the nature of what happened over there. It is a unified field that is affecting everything. And we will talk much more on this subject at a later time.
All right. Thank you. How can we actively and unambiguously access help from higher realms?
As if you are not already. Do you understand? The higher realms are activating the shift in consciousness, whether you like it or not. The difficulty is resistance to that. Whatever resistance happens causes suffering in the physical, emotional, or mental field. So if one is having, shall we say, a battle within, that is, are you suffering, then the notion is this: appeal to the higher order, that is, to pray. You have heard this before. Pray for the healing. But the healing will not come if you continue to behave and hold the same ideas as before. In order for healing, something about yourself has to change. You have to change. And that is in alignment with the divine. Then one is asking for help, shall we say, from the higher orders, and it is giving it. It is pointing out, this is the problem. Look at your suffering. You are resisting change. And if you cease to resist change, you put yourself in the hands of the divine. You trust the divine will bring to you the solutions that one needs. And if one is clear about this, then one activates the law of magnetism. To understand, if you appeal to the higher and you are in alignment with the higher, you are saying, divine source, guide me. Because I do not know what to do. You follow what I mean? You have sublimated yourself. You have put yourself in the hands of the higher order. And it will surely point out what you are resisting. Does this follow?
It does. Yes, it does. Thank you. How do we learn the lessons that we are here to learn in the least problematic way and without stress?
You understand what is a funny question? What is stress? But the motivation to release. Stress is just an organism that is saying, look, you are fighting the divine. You understand, if you take off the stress, if you put yourself in the hands, that is, if you, as it is said, bow down, then you ask, guide me. I will follow. I do not, because then when you realize stress has arisen from resistance. It is the suffering that is part of the resistance. Does that make sense? Everything that you resist is suffering, and suffering comes with avoiding the suffering, and that is called it is self-perpetuating. You cannot ask the divine to reduce your stress when you are making it. All it can possibly say is stop doing what you're doing. Then the stress will not be there. Does this follow?
It does, thank you.
You understand this is because you create your own reality in alignment with the unfolding of all consciousness. But it is not that all consciousness is forcing anything onto you. You are operating within that field. So some people who have learned this great lesson simply seem to flow through life with enough. They have always been treated fairly, as is the sign of divinity.
So when we're in moments of stress and caught up in the suffering that's the result of the resistance, how do we go from there to the moments where we can let go and trust that we're in the hands of the divine?
Shall we say, when you look at what is it that I am trying to impose, to understand, if I cease to impose, if I am in alignment and aware of the divine source, it is obvious to shall we say, you can perceive it. I do not want to say see, because sometimes it is an inner knowing that is a sense that fills all of your senses, that this is a struggle. What alternatives is there to my struggle? Do you follow what I mean? If I am not trying to force myself onto the divine consciousness, if I am not trying to make the mass, that is the others, fit what I want. Do you understand what I mean? Then one creates one's reality, and it is in alignment. It is not coming from one's personality. It is coming because you are fulfilling your true nature. And that is what is the shift in consciousness. You understand, more and more people are recognizing after so many years of trying to force something, recognizing that they have, shall we say, won themselves out doing this. And now they can let it go.
Fantastic.
Even so, I want to say, even so, There are many that have benefited, shall we say, materially, financially, in other ways as well. And it is filled with selfishness. Then when one holds that selfishness in place, it draws to you, shall we say, the very order of transformation. That is, it will be removed, shall we say, by other mechanisms. There is balance, whether you like it or not.
Thank you. Final question for today. I have found a path that gives me satisfaction and upliftment. Are you telling me to abandon that and follow your methods?
What a beautiful question. Because if one has found a path that is uplifting, you are already following what I am suggesting. I have no path myself. I recognize all paths lead eventually to the divine. The question is, how many shortcuts are there? That is all. But if one is happy with what one is doing, then what more is there to ask? Consciousness will arise. Consciousness will open one's vision. Nobody should be forced into anything. Nature, the natural order, the divine that belongs to all, will find the easiest, most direct, and appropriate way to speak to everyone. So if one has found something that is speaking words of wisdom, what more could you want?
Fantastic. Thank you. Is there anything else you'd like to add for us today?
I want to say this. The door is opening when one sees negativity. Try to perceive it as part of the unfolding plan. Suffering occurs within resistance. For those that want to hold on to the old, the solid form, and the old, shall we say, philosophies and religious practices and so on, may do so, but there is consequences in all of this. When you see your brothers and sisters suffering, do what you can to alleviate, but also try to see what is happening in the creation. What have they been doing that draws that to them? And what have I learned from that? Enough for today. Once again, it is always important to acknowledge each one individually working in their own personal creation, their own unfolding story, as if one were to stop for a moment and review the storyline as it is at the present time. And as the author of it, where will you take the story next? Then thank you, and may the rest of the day be productive, thoughtful, and beneficial. Thank you, and bye.